So Dragonflight is officially almost upon us, and with it, of course, new ways to make gold to then convert that into Battle.net balance and to play World of Warcraft completely for free. But rather than focusing on the new methods like the profession revamp, this guide will instead highlight some of the older methods and old recipes that will very likely continue to be viable going into Dragonflight and are also extremely easy to not only obtain the recipes for, but to also keep up with the materials and to list them on the auction house to then easily supplement your income on top of the new ways to make gold and Battle.net balance in Dragonflight to make things even more efficient and time saving for you. So with that, let's now go through my top 5 easy recipe choices for supplementing your gold income, even in Dragonflight. And by the way, these recipes and methods do mainly involve commodities, which with the recent auction house change, connecting commodities within each region. So for example, all the North American realms will share the same auction house for commodities, which includes crafting materials and also things like enchants, food, potions, anything that's consumable. And while this change largely made it so that a lot of these so-called commodities have become a bit cheaper and thus have somewhat lower profits, but it also means that whenever you list one of these items on the auction house, even though previously, for example, if you list like an old expansion item, consumable, or crafting material, it might take a while to actually sell. You might have to relist it several times, especially if it's something more niche. But nowadays, with the connected commodity markets, it actually became a lot easier and quicker to sell even niche items. And so today's guide will largely cover a lot of these items that not that many people actually know about selling, and thus there's still a decent profit margin to be made. And yet these even niche items are still selling quick enough for you to be able to consistently sort of craft them on a regular basis to supplement your gold income. And with that, counting down from number 5 of easy recipes to obtain to supplement your gold income. And by the way, these are in fact old recipes from older expansions, which means you do have to level up your whatever expansion skill for that profession if you haven't done so already. But fortunately now another perk of having this connected auction house with commodities is that the crafting materials are going to be a lot cheaper, right? Even ones that are previously more rare, which will mean that you won't have to buy or spend as much gold to purchase all the materials needed to level up. And for that, I'll also link some websites below for you to be able to follow how to power level each profession from whichever expansion. Anyhow, starting with number 5 on my list, we actually have alchemy, specifically a type of transmutation or a family of transmutations that I really like and has maintained a lot of profitability even with the commodity changes, and that is the Ghost Iron, Trillium, and Living Steel family of transmutes. These recipes have likely stayed profitable and will definitely continue to see a lot of demand because of the various like mounts and pets and other items that are quite popular and are reliant on these materials from Mists of Pandaria, by the way. But the first thing you want to do before setting up these methods is to first become a transmute master or transmutation master, which you can just learn from your capital city alchemy trainer. And what this will allow you to do is to get 20% more out of your transmutations, at least for recipes up to the Mists of Pandaria expansion, and thus being very significant in getting you more materials to then sell on the auction house, right? And by the way, this actually comes in the form of procs, so you don't just automatically get 20% more out of each craft. You actually have a chance to proc more materials. It can be a double proc or triple proc. Sometimes you'll get 2 per cast or per craft, or 3 or 4. I think it even goes up to 5. But if you average them all out, it's about 20% more stuff. Now, as a quick bonus, a lot of other transmutes are profitable as well, such as Arcanite Bar from Vanilla WoW, and things like some of the rare gems from Pandaria, also Pyrium Bar from Cataclysm, which is used for the Sandstone Drake mount. But one of the easiest transmutes to do is Living Steel because it's just a daily cooldown, so you can just buy up the Trillium bars, 6 of them, and then just transmute them into Living Steel while also having a chance to proc them, right? It feels really good to proc extra Living Steels because each one is worth like 500 to 600. So that's just an easy, like quick few hundred extra gold you can get per day. And that's just sort of the baseline profits of it, right? If you want to have even higher profits, you can actually have a miner with the smelt ghost iron option or smelt trillium. Whichever is more profitable at the moment. You can download the Trade Skill Master add-on and desktop app to help track the current prices, or just check the auction house yourself. But essentially with the miner, you'll be able to better control whether you want to smelt, ghost iron ore into ghost iron to then transmute into trillium, which then transmutes into living steel, right? So again, you can either just straight up buy the trillium bars that directly transmute into living steel, or you can even go for the precursor materials to make that trillium. And you can even transmute the ghost iron bars into trillium for an additional chance to proc 20% more on average, right, with transmutation mastery. And with that, my recommendation is largely to just do this process with the cheapest route possible to then sell these living steels raw for a quick profit. Although if you really wanted to, you could also then turn some of those living steels, if not all of them, into mounts and pets, depending on your realm, right? Because these types of items like mounts are not region wide, which means not only will they sell a lot slower, especially with the recent mount bloat and pet bloat, with there being like hundreds of mounts and like thousands of pets, and a lot of the more hardcore older collectors already owning these items, right? These mounts and such, like the Sky Golem and the geosynchronous world spinner. Personally, I'm not as focused on selling these anymore, as from what I've observed, they also don't sell nearly as quickly as before. So I'd rather just focus more on the newest expansion content, because those sell quickly, right? Like the current Shadowlands, like most relevant gear, and when Dragonflight comes out, that's what I'm going to be focusing on as well. But something that will supplement that quite well, I found, would be things like commodities, the ones that still maintain a decent profit margins and yet sell pretty quickly as well and are pretty much low maintenance. And that's sort of my rationale with this. But if you don't mind waiting a few days up to even a few weeks to make a, albeit very large and profitable sale of a mount, I highly encourage you to give it a try, especially if you're on a more higher population server. And I think especially if you're on EU servers, because those generally are a bit higher population as well. And with that, moving on to number 4 on my list, we have enchanting, with specifically old world enchants that are going to be useful in mostly leveling, with of course a lot of people leveling not only now with the experience buffs before Dragonflight, but also as Dragonflight starts, with even new characters that they might create and want to play in the new expansion. Now for these enchants, there isn't one particular one that is just going to be the best, and rather what you want to do, especially with the merged commodity markets, is to craft a handful of semi-profitable enchants, so to speak, which means that each one of them isn't going to get you a lot of gold for just crafting one, unlike before where you might be able to get hundreds if not thousands of gold in profit from just crafting one old enchant, especially the ones in demand. After the auction house merge, however, the profit margins have decreased by a lot, but the benefit of that is that these enchants have started to sell a lot more quickly, right? Whereas previously you will have to relist these auctions for sometimes several days before one even sells. But now basically you can sell them within minutes even, or sometimes hours, and you can actually do this multiple times per day. For what you can do is actually just craft a handful, let's say like 3 to 4 to 5 of each of the useful enchants for leveling, list them all in the auction house. Whenever you have downtime in the game, right, you can just do this while you're waiting for a dungeon queue or raid or whatever it is, or PvP. You can just keep doing this if you have enchanting, and then just keep relisting and selling auctions really quickly, basically whenever you want, for almost on-demand gold, as long as your older enchants have already sold. Now, an easy way to determine which enchants to actually buy materials for, craft, and then sell is to use the, again, Trade Skill Master add-on, which, as you can see on the right side, it'll actually show you the current profit margins for each enchant. Although because the auction house, especially with the combined markets for commodities, moves so quickly and prices can fluctuate instantly, it might actually be better to get a hang for some of the commodity and material prices, as well as how much the enchants are currently selling for, by constantly checking the auction house, again, whenever you have time. But if I were to highlight some of my favorite old enchants to sell, it would probably be Crusader from Vanilla WoW, although the recipe is quite rare and it's probably going to be quite expensive right now. But Crusader is one of the ones that I've been able to find a lot of very consistent profits with. Probably likely due to the fact that not as many players actually have that recipe, right? But another great alternative is the Mark of the Hidden Satyr, which is from Legion. You just have to complete a few quests to get it. Although, if you could actually spend a little bit of time, invest a little bit of time to rank up the recipe, because for that Legion recipe, you can actually get up to rank 3. The higher the ranks, the lower the material cost, which means once you reach rank 3 for the Mark, for that enchant, your profit margins are going to be the most optimal. And sometimes, even if you don't have the highest rank, I only have rank 2, you will be able to still make some profits with it, although it's not nearly as good as if you actually have rank 3. So I would highly recommend getting that, even though I don't personally have it just yet. But that's definitely another really quick seller and one of the better enchants in terms of profits that you can sell. Aside from that, some other good leveling enchants are Glorious Stats for the chest, as well as Elemental Force for weapons. And then moving forward, especially before Dragonflight or right as Dragonflight starts, I predict that a lot of the Shadowlands enchants will actually see somewhat of a surge in demand, as well as people want to not only level up their characters but also bring in newer characters through leveling through Dragonflight, and also obviously want to deck out, or some people at least will want to deck out their characters and make leveling faster as they race towards max level. And to do so, they would want to pick up some great enchants, especially weapon enchants, for their characters. And moving on to number 3 on my list, I have a very quick and easy one from engineering, which is the Scrapbot construction kit from Northrend Enchanting, which actually not that many people know about, and yet this is actually a very helpful and useful item because it actually allows people or players, once deployed, to actually repair their gear and also sell off, junk or whatever might be cluttering up their inventory. Now, each craft actually grants you 5 kits and costs 10 Serenite bars, which means the profit margins are actually deceptively quite decent, which can even be further improved if you have, again, mining, which will allow you to smelt Serenite ore into Serenite bars and allow you to eke out slightly more margins that way. And to pick up this recipe as an engineer, you'll want to head to this place, the Terrace of the Makers in Northrend. But first, you actually want to go to the auction house to grab 5 overcharged capacitors and 4 handfuls of cobalt bolts to be able to complete this quest. And also, before you go, you also want level 50 Northern Engineering, which you can easily level up with the cheaper commodities and with the power leveling profession guides that I'll link in the description. But anyhow, once you fulfill those requirements, head to this area in the Storm Peaks, start killing these cyborg, gnome mobs. It actually only took me 1 kill to be able to get the quest item to drop, to then start the quest, for which you can just bring those aforementioned items to, and basically be able to straight up learn the recipe. And with that, on to number 2 on my list, we have some new items that actually came out very recently in a recent Shadowlands patch, and those are the new marks from Inscription. And you can also, since you already have Inscription, you might as well also supplement that income with some of the older cosmetic glyphs as well. But what I want to highlight here for relatively easy profits are some of the new marks that, by the way, not that many people know about, but these are a new category of items for Inscription to craft that are going to be very similar to the older glyphs, but actually can be learned. And right now they are only available to druids to my knowledge. But once any druid learns these, and by the way, you can sell the consumable items for them to learn from and sell these on the auction house, right? Obviously. But anyhow, what this does, or what the marks do, is allow druids to, once they learn these marks, have additional barbershop customization options, specifically for their shape-shifting forms. There are actually quite a few of these marks that scribes can craft, but they will have to pick up some of these recipes. Not all of them are that easy to find. Some of the sort of random drops around Shadowlands. So I'm only going to list 3 here that I've been very easily able to get. But I'll list the full list in the description via a guide below. But anyhow, the first one that I highly recommend that is easy to pick up is the Mark of the Gloomstalker Dreadbat, which you can buy off this vendor right here in the middle southern area of Revendreth by the black market. Actually, you need 30 creeping crawlers meats to be able to purchase it, which thanks to the combined auction houses for commodities is very cheap. The second one I would recommend getting is the Mark of the Shimmering Arden Moth, which you can get by first going over to the northwestern side of Ardenweald to talk to the NPC that I have right here. And then once you do so, you want to pick up this quest item next to her, called some kind of net. And once you have that net, you can actually either go over to the Legion Val'sharah to capture a moth, so to speak, and then return to this NPC right here to be able to trade it in for the recipe. Or alternatively, instead of having to head over to Ardenweald on the Broken Isles in the Legion expansion to capture one of these Veil Flitter pets or critters, if you actually have that critter or pet in your pet journal, you can just summon it and then use the net that I talked about and just capture the Veil Flitter. It won't deplete your pet from your pet journal, fortunately, but it will help you complete this sort of pseudo quest to allow you to go back to the NPC in Ardenweald to turn in the moth to trade in for the recipe. And last but not least here, and again, there are tons of other marks that you can get, but they are a bit more difficult or RNG to get, but you can definitely check out the guide I will list or link in the description box below. But the third one that I want to highlight here is called the Mark of the Duskwing Raven, which might not be as accessible to everyone, but since I already had the reputation built up with Val'sharah, you actually just need Honored with the Dreamweavers in Val'sharah and Legion, the faction that is, to be able to purchase this technique for the mark if you're a scribe. And finally, and certainly not least, and this is probably my favorite one, and that is Outland Specialty Cloth, which for the recipes, you can easily go to Shattered City, fly to this area to directly buy from these vendors. Now you can basically pick up all the recipes that they have available, but the main three that we're going to be focusing on that are going to be some of the quicker profit gold makers, because they are also classified as commodities, and hence, the region-wide commodity markets making things a lot faster for buyers to, pick up these items, right? And anyhow, these even niche items can get bought out fairly quickly. It might not come as quickly as some of the other ones, consumables. You might have to wait a day or two, but it's still relatively quick compared to before the auction house connection, and yet the profit margins are still quite good, provided that, especially if you can check the auction houses frequently to buy out some of the materials for cheaper. Anyhow, the three main cloth recipes, specialty cloths that you want to get and sell are Shadow Cloth, Stealth Cloth, and Primal Moon Cloth. Now there is a bit of extra effort you'll have to put in to craft each of these cloths, and it's that they can each only be crafted in specific areas, mostly in Outland, while the Primal Moon Cloth can be crafted throughout World of Warcraft wherever there is a moon well. So again, first of all, for Shadow Cloth, you have to go to this altar of shadows, so to speak, in Shadow Moon Valley to be able to craft it. Then for Spell Cloth, you have to head over to the Netherstorm. To, I think, anywhere in the Netherstorm you can craft Spell Cloth. And then last but not least, again, for Primal Moon Cloth, you can craft it in any moonwell, one of which is actually just nearby Shattered City, slightly to the east of the city, where you'll be able to find a place with sort of hostile NPCs, but there also being a moonwell there that you can pretty conveniently use. And the best way, I believe, to get around this limitation is just to craft several of these at the same time, right? So you don't have to constantly revisit these areas in Outland, but can rather just bulk craft, so to speak, right? A whole bunch of these cloths, and then just come in or come back to these locations from time to time to then craft another batch. And there you have it. Those are my top 5 categories and methods and recipes for supplementing your gold making, even into Dragonflight, with mainly commodity items that definitely sell quite quickly and yet are still going to maintain a certain level of profit margins, even if some of them only get you 100 or a few hundred gold rather each time, or even less than that. Because the commodity markets move so quickly, you can oftentimes craft a handful of each of these items to sell and list at the same time and still have all of them sell by the next time, which will usually just be in a few hours or a day or so, that you can then recraft them and sell them again on the auction house, and thus getting you a steady stream of income. And of course, there are other honorable mentions that people can craft, like old gems, like a BFA speed gem, glyphs, as well as mounts and pets, which I personally don't do as many mounts anymore because of the mount bloat. But anyhow, let me know in the comment section below what items that I may have missed and that you actually use to supplement your gold income or even farm up for that. Anyhow, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next video. Peace!